Your handle is open. Use the hashtag Prime Edition to engage us on this conversation we are just about to have. The journey to transform Kenya's capital, Nairobi, now known as the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. The man in charge, Major Mohamed Badi, is in studio. John Jacob Kuria is going to be engaging him on the progress he has made in transforming the city and what is still left in his entry. John Jacob Kuria, it's over to you now.
Thank you very much, Safin. It's time for us to get to talk with the General, Mohamed Badi, straight from the Kenya Air Force and now in charge of the affairs of Nairobi City County. First of all, General, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Probably say hi to Nairobi residents and all Kenyans, and then we begin.
Good evening, KBC viewers. I'm delighted to be here at KBC to answer the questions many Nairobi residents would like to know the answers. So thank you for inviting me.
All right. 1 year on after you were given this mandate as the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, how would you compare where Nairobi County was and where it is now after you took over?
I think I would not like to blow my own trumpet.
Okay.
I would rather the Nairobians talk about it. Mm-hmm. But as far as NMS is concerned, NMS was constituted actually to act on behalf of national government on the 4 transferred functions. That is mainly the county health services, the county transport and public works, the county housing planning and urban development, and lastly the housing, the county's environmental, water, sanitation and auxiliary services. Mm-hmm. So those were the 4 transferred functions, and in every function that was transferred to us, we have moved a lot. If it is the transport and public works, we have gone a great mile in ensuring that the roads are repaired up to standard, of course with proper drainages. Mm-hmm. And you know, when you say you are repairing the road comes with its own infrastructure itself. That includes the signage, of course the seating, whether there are benches on the road, the trees planted on the side of the roads. Mm-hmm. So all these come as road furniture. Okay. Actually, we call them road furniture. Mm-hmm. So ours is to ensure, and we are striving very hard to ensure that every road that is built has got its own furniture.
And sorry to cut you short, because we'll talk about roads in a bit. But when you were taking over this mandate, there was a governor, and then he was impeached as you were continuing with your work. And now you have a deputy governor. There's a case in court, obviously, that was ruled the other day, and probably she will talk over the reins of power as the substantive governor of Nairobi City County. But would want to know, how have you been working in coordination with the Nairobi City County, and particularly the deputy governor?
Well, our relationship has been smooth. As I said, we are non-political side working for national government. So ours is just to ensure that work is done. Even with the former governor who was impeached, I always used to repeat and say, we are not in for political mileage. We are in to ensure service delivery. So long as they don't obstruct our functions, then we work on very well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talk about the costs of running the county of Nairobi, or the services that were given to you, the 4 functions that were given to you, because we had numbers that were really, baffling, where you would repair vehicles with millions of shillings, and when you came in, the costs that you put in to repair some of those, vehicles that were damaged or declared, unworthy.
The biggest disadvantage sometimes comes in the procurement and tendering system. People tend to inflate the prices of materials, the prices of repairs. So when we took over, we brought in the proper system and we have streamlined. Of course, I've had, because of my background in the military, which I'm still serving, had to use the expertise of military to ensure that all the procurement processes and the public works services are in line with the procurement law. So once you stick to the procurement law, then the costs come down. Yeah.
24 health facilities, let's get to the health function. 24 health facilities were to be constructed in informal settlements. Of course, we've seen what you have done in Mukuru kwa Jenga.
Yes.
Probably you can update us on the progress of these other hospitals and where you're constructing them as the Nairobi Metropolitan Services.
We have distributed these. As I said earlier in my interviews, the problem came is when NMS was established, it was when COVID had just started. So our biggest fear is the informal and disadvantaged areas in Nairobi. How are they going to get water? That was the first problem. There was no water in any of the slums. So the first thing, you can't tell people to wash their hands, and wear masks, sanitize, when they cannot afford masks, they cannot afford sanitizers, and they don't have even cooking water, leave alone washing hands. So our first mandate was to ensure that there is no Nairobi citizen that suffers because of lack of water. That's why we embarked during our first 100 days to build 100 boreholes. But when the demand became too much, we ensured that during our first year, we completed 193 boreholes distributed around Nairobi County. On top of that, once we addressed the water problem, then we saw that each of our informal settlement, which there are almost 13, people just talk about Mathare and Kibera, but we have 13 informal settlements. Each of the 13 lacked the basic health facilities. Even a normal dispensary was not in existence. The ones which existed were either private or operated by religious bodies like churches and NGOs. So when we were repairing Mukuru, we found out there is a clinic that is operated by, actually it is the Dutch Catholic Church, through an NGO that operated. Mukuru was housing around 400,000 people with a dispensary with only 8 beds maternity. So you can imagine the demand that was there. You could only be allowed, as the president has mentioned in his speech, that a woman would be allowed only 1 hour after delivery to get out of the hospital because of bed demand. That is when His Excellency ordered that we embark on building the 24 hospitals. So we were given the mandate to do that. 19 were to be built from scratch, and 5 of them were the building that had been started by the different governors, but somehow abandoned halfway. So we have taken upon us to complete the 5, and of course appointed a contractor to do the 19 afresh.
All right.
But we managed to save some money from the amount of money that we are given to do the 24 hospitals. We are now going to complete 27 hospitals.
27 hospitals?
Yes.
Across the 13 informal settlements?
Yes.
Okay.
And 6 have already been commissioned by His Excellency. They are running, and we have 12 ready to be open. So within the next month, the 18 will be fully functional after commissioning, the 12, and the remaining ones before end of July.
Before the end of July, we shall have all the hospitals. During this time of the last county governments we've seen, it became normal since outside City Hall almost twice a year to see health workers in Nairobi City County, not just Nairobi, even in other counties, striking because of a human resource aspect and other issues they had. How have you been able to manage the human resource aspect in the city county of Nairobi to prevent or to avert strikes?
Yeah, one of it is the medical personnel that are manning the current hospitals. It's true we have a shortage, and the demand due to COVID has forced them to work some of the hospitals 24 hours. So it has taken a strain on them. But we have talked with the union and the doctors themselves Since we came in, we have recruited over 2,500 medical personnel. That is all the doctors, nurses, and all those health-related services. We have hired them. We have the volunteers that we are being helped by other NGOs to pay them, especially during this COVID period, for awareness, and of course in some areas attending. The volunteers also used to track those people who have COVID and disappear into villages. We try to track them so that we can get them to do the recovery process. So that has, with the influx of the new medical personnel, it has reduced the pressure. The other issues, of course, was the insurance cover, and we have engaged them, and in this financial year we'll be able to put all our doctors and nurses under NHIF. Their biggest issue is they didn't want to go to private insurance companies, but now we have streamlined the system, and all of them are going to be put under NHIF.
Will it be the special cover for NHIF or the...
It will be the special cover for medical personnel.
All right.
Yeah, and on top of that, we have also sponsored around 66,000 households, especially the extremely poor members of the society, sponsoring them to be covered under universal health care of the presidency Big Four agenda, so that we pay for them to be covered under NHIF. We believe this will reduce a lot of health bills that are going to the common wananchi, which they cannot afford.
All right. Let's talk about water provision. You've talked about the boreholes that you've drilled, and there are also water bowsers that we saw being commissioned by President Uhuru Kenyatta. When you look back, 1 year later, has NMS been able to address the perennial water shortage in the city county of Nairobi?
As I've said before, the water shortage in Nairobi goes a long way back, even before devolution. So the problem in Nairobi is some of this, the water infrastructure, the piping and so forth, most of them are over 30 to 40 years old. So every 10 years you need to either upgrade or remove those existing water pipes and replace them. Of course, there are new technologies. You can't stick to the old steel water pipes that are coming, delivering water through Nairobi. So we are trying to change the infrastructure, but it costs a lot. The other problem is removing the water from the existing dams in Murang'a, coming all the way through Kiambu and Nairobi. The acquisition of land where these pipes will pass. People, once they know that the pipe is going to pass through his farm, then that piece of land is so exaggerated that to buy it off for the pipe to pass now becomes so exorbitant that the government faces challenges. So we are going through the National Land Commission, who of course forceful acquire of that land with the government rates, so that we are able to build infrastructure. Nairobi, right now, as we are talking, you know, houses almost over 4 million personnel, with 2 million at night and almost 4 to 5 during the day. Our current usage is over 830 cubic meters per day, 830,000 cubic meters per day. The infrastructure that we have supports our current rate of water flowing in Nairobi is 525,000 cubic meters per day. So you'll find there's a shortage of almost deficit of 300,000 cubic meters that we lack. That's why you find rationing of different estates, and some estates even going missing.
Yeah, like residents of Langata, from some of the responses we've collected, are talking about water shortage perennial in Langata.
Yes. True. It's because Langata expanded at a very fast rate, and many other estates are now coming up either in South Sea, Eastlands, and so forth. With the residents, especially the low housing schemes that are coming up, we are going to face quite a huge amount of challenge if this water infrastructure is not done. There must be new infrastructure in place.
Let's take a small breather, and then when we come back, we'll continue responding to some of the questions sent by our viewers, and of course some of the others we have. We'll talk about dumping, because I know you've closed about 110 illegal dumping sites, and we'll ask ourselves whether that has been able to address the problem of dumping and illegal dumping sites in the Nairobi City County. Don't go too far. We're taking a short breather. We're coming back in a few.